Greetings and welcome to Outlaw Gamer Radio, the official podcast of OutlawGamers.com. This is the show where we live to play and play to live. I'm Brent Adams, joined by a man who's one step closer to checking unpaid internship with Professor Chaos off of his bucket list, Mr. Lauren Baumgarten. Lauren!
Oh, happy E3, Brent.
Happy E3 to you, buddy.
I love what you're referencing.
Yes, it was, honestly, it was probably the happiest moment of the entire show for me.
That was a total shock to me. Was it a complete shock to you?
That's why it was my favorite moment. And
my favorite moments this year, and we'll talk about them, were ones that I didn't expect, and that was definitely one of them.
Surprises can go one way, as in the case of South Park Fractured Butthole, or they can go the other way, as in the retail cost of the Xbox One Elite controller, as an example.
Oh, which is, I don't even know what it is. What was it?
$150.
Come on, are you serious?
Not even kidding. And that is the first story that we're going to get to in today's E3 roundup. Of course, we told you we were coming back later in the week to cover Microsoft and Sony and all the other things that we missed the first time around, because we recorded before those things finished, but they finished now, and now we're recording. You see how that works, kids? Anyway, we don't have.
I don't even want to do a show now. Now that you just told me that,
who would? I don't want to game anymore.
Screw the games industry.
I'm going to go take up another hobby. I'm going to start collecting milk cartons or something. Anyway.
I can't believe you just told it's $150.
We're gonna cover. We're not gonna cover everything because we don't have the time to cover everything. But we are going to cover the things that caught our eye, the things that we're interested in, the things we love, the things we hated. And we're going to start as Monday started with the Microsoft press conference. And I think that probably the first thing that we need to talk about is backwards compatibility. That they announced that early in the press conference. It was a big deal. Or they made it a big deal. I thought probably one of the best moments of that entire show was they were talking about backwards compatibility, which is going to work through some sort of emulation, and support's going to have to be enabled. It's not going to just work for every Xbox game out there, but you are going to be able to put your disc in for games that you own, and it'll download the software that you need. It'll basically download like the version they've created to run on emulation. So it's not like backwards compatibility from, say, like the PlayStation 3 generation or the early PlayStation 3 models. But anyway, it is emulation. But I thought Microsoft nailed it when they said, we're not going to charge you to play the games you already own. I thought that was a great line. It was a great jab at Sony. And the fact that the only sort of backwards compatibility they kind of have is PlayStation Now, which they do charge for. So I thought that was a good thing out of the gate for Microsoft in their press event.
I agree, Brent. So let me, if I may, start us off with a little bit of an overview of the press conference and the press conferences in general. I feel just because if I may, I want to back up just a smidge.
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
because I feel like this year. I don't feel this year like, number one, like there is a clear winner, and number two, I don't know if it's because we've been covering this for so long, or maybe because I don't feel like there's a clear winner, but I almost don't even want to discuss that in those terms, in the sense that I don't know, something. It just feels like I want to talk about the games and what they were talking about, and I maybe if there was a clear winner, I would feel differently,
right?
But I don't. If there was a winning moment, I agree with you that this was it.
In Microsoft's press conference?
In almost in any of them. I mean, I think that like the crowd.
So this was a big deal for you, yeah?
No, actually it wasn't. But the crowd went nuts for it.
Sure,
and I thought it was very cool, and it was an awesome dig. I personally, my first thought, honestly, when I saw this was, fuck you very much for not telling me this 2 years ago. Like, that's great, but I sold my Xbox 360 long ago. Before the generation switch, but I would have sold it anyway, not knowing that there would be backwards compatibility.
Right. So this might have changed the complexion on the matter for you. You might have, well, maybe I'll hang on to these games if there's any chance of backwards compatibility.
Right. I don't have any of my Xbox or PlayStation 3, Xbox One, Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 games left because nobody at the time of transition said there would be backwards compatibility.
Right. Well,
and I only have one TV.
Yeah.
And so I don't see the point in having two consoles hooked up to it. But anyway, I think it was an awesome moment. The crowd went ballistic.
They did.
And my hope is that moving forward, both of the companies will recognize how important this is to gamers.
Well, Shuhei Yoshida did an interview, I think, with Polygon, and they asked him a little bit about this, and he said, if this was easy to do, we would have done it. But emulating last generation on current gen hardware is not easy. He said that they don't have immediate plans for it, but if something changes in the future, that they would certainly do it. But he was skeptical about this. He talked about, well, I'll be curious to see what the list of games is and how they run and all that.
Certainly, but even something like, if they could attack it now, Brent, and say, okay, we're going to want to protect these PlayStation 4 games, and hey, everybody, just so you know, if you can prove you still have the discs or you bought the digital download when we release the PlayStation 5, you'll be able to access those games for free through PlayStation Now.
I think that what Microsoft is proposing is fantastic, actually, and we've talked about this very thing in the past. We've suggested almost this exact strategy. I think it's fantastic. The only thing that I'm, I guess, skeptical or just concerned about is which games are going to be supported. They're saying they're going to have 100 by the holidays this year, and then they're going to be adding hundreds more as time goes on. They've got to keep their word on that. They have to actually do that in order for this to have real value. And I'm the only Xbox 360 game that I still own is Red Dead Redemption. It's the only
one. And I was going to say, Brent, I think they dropped the ball, and maybe they didn't do this because it just simply wasn't a possibility.
Yeah.
But I think dropping the mic in this moment would have occurred when they said, and coming in the first wave is Red Dead Redemption.
Yes, well, for you and I, that would have been the only thing that we needed to hear.
Yes.
So that's the only thing.
But anyway, I don't mean to crap on it. I personally felt like this is great, like a year and a half after the console came out or whatever it is.
Yeah, but hey, the console's cheaper now too, and we've also
the Kinect.
Discovered that Kinect is not required for the experiences they once said it was. So
yes, indeed.
In a sense, maybe they did you a favor. I don't know.
But it was a great moment. But so along with that moment, Brett, so it was interesting. You and I were kind of talking about this before we started recording. How this year it seemed like there was a switch, almost 180 from last year.
Yeah.
Where basically Sony's press conference was 95% games,
yep,
and just a smidge of hardware. Xbox was talking a lot more about hardware between the HoloLens, backwards compatibility, and the Elite controller.
They were talking about hardware and services.
Right, a lot more and less about games. And so not to diminish that they were talking about games, but it was much like the opposite of what it was last year. And so another one of the things they talked about, the Xbox One Elite controller,
which I loved. I mean, like, I watched it. I said, well, the one takeaway from the press conference for me is I'll get that fucking controller. That looks awesome. And then I found out the price point.
Yeah, I agreed with you, and I did not know the retail price.
I was talking to
and that's
Esteban.
insane.
I found out last night. I was talking to Esteban. I was driving around. I was talking to Esteban while I was in the car, and I about wrecked. I about ran the car off the road when he told me what the price point was. I could not believe how much they are charging for that thing. And Tony put it in perspective. He says, there are pro controllers that, I mean, that's not rare to pay that kind of money for a really, really high end controller. I'm like, okay, like, I understand that and everything, but damn, I mean, like, they are really, like, this thing had better be able to make me pancakes in the morning and maybe even fluff me at night. I mean, this thing had better be a damn serious controller.
Yeah, I mean, there's no chance in hell I'm getting it. I don't own an Xbox One currently. There will be an Xbox One controller that comes with the Oculus Rift, although I have no doubt that if I get the Rift, I'll replace it with the touch, and I have no use for this whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's very interesting, and I guess to people that want to buy those types of pro controllers, if that price is normal, then good on you. I mean, that's
hope you enjoy.
Indeed.
One of the games that really caught my eye, and there's really not a lot of games from the Microsoft press conference for me. I guess that's a way of saying that nothing Microsoft showed off in their press conference was enough for me to say, oh, well, now I got to get an Xbox One.
That's for sure.
But the one game that did really catch my eye and that I really hope maybe comes to PC is ReCore. We didn't see any gameplay. We just saw a cinematic trailer for it, but I was very intrigued by what we saw in the trailer and by maybe some of the gameplay possibilities that is suggested by that trailer. So that's one that I'm keeping my eye on. I guess if you're a Halo fan or a Gears of War fan, plenty to get excited about because Microsoft's got your back with both of those titles. What about the HoloLens demo? That was another moment that really got the crowd excited. What did you think of that, Lauren?
I thought it was super dope. Actually, and what I'm looking for is, so they did the Minecraft demo. I actually showed it to my wife.
Yeah.
They did that whole like watching or playing on a TV on the wall demo and then moving it to the table.
Right.
And it continues to impress, man. And I just want to see more and more and more from it. I want to read more. I think more people are going to get hands on at E3. I've done a little bit of reading on it. Some people have said that there's some issues with the field of view being very small. And it being a little bit less responsive because of that.
Right.
But I thought the demo was it continues to wow me, and I thought it was very impressive. And I'm very excited to see more of the HoloLens on the games. I agree that Recore looked interesting. Halo 5, I have to tell you, it's not a console pusher for me, but the fact that Nathan Fillion is in it is meaningful to me.
Yeah,
he's not in enough games, and Halo 3 ODST was my favorite in the series, and I know that's odd. And Nathan Fillion and half the cast of Firefly was in it, and that's not a small part of it. I mean, it was cool to be moving through the game and having Nathan Fillion at your side.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't know why he's not in more video games, honestly.
Because he's too busy being awesome.
Yeah, that's possible. But I thought it was interesting.
He's got that fucking network TV show. Like, that's an hour-long drama. That's like 17-hour workdays right there, man.
Castle? Yeah, no, I know. But, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But HoloLens looks cool. I feel like it's too early. I mean, I don't think we're going to see it for a little while, and I want to see more of it.
Yeah.
Minecraft to me is, Minecraft is a game I don't get. It just doesn't scratch my itch at all for, I just don't understand. I don't get why people are so into it and so popular. It's not my thing. And so the cool part of it was the holograph part of it to me.
Yeah.
You know, if they had shown Battlefront being played on a tabletop, it might have been more endearing to me. But yeah, dude, I can't wait to see more from the HoloLens.
Well, that's kind of me. Like the possibilities of what the HoloLens represents, I think are really interesting. And I can think of a lot of things that are not necessarily traditional games. I mean, some things are augmented reality type things that we've seen in the past. I mean, like imagine playing a game of Magic, and you put a card on the table, and a little monster climbs out of the card onto the table and goes and dukes it out.
Right.
With your opponent's monster.
Why have they not created the holograms from Star Wars yet?
Yeah, those kinds of things. Well, and imagine what you could do with traditional, like tabletop board games, but enhanced with kind of video game dynamics. Like imagine playing a game of Clue as an example, in which the game board is actually like a dollhouse mansion sitting on your table, and you can kind of dissolve the walls away and peek inside, and be like video Clue, like where you're seeing scenes play out and people talking to each other, and you're trying to unravel clues as to who did what and all that kind of stuff. I can think of a lot of things like that, but in terms of video games, other than it's the biggest screen you could ever want to have projected on any wall in your house, other than that, I don't know how it fits into traditional games. I think Minecraft was a good demo, but also sort of a unique opportunity.
The most compelling thing I've seen from the HoloLens so far still remains the Mars demo.
Right.
And how it covers the whole room and everything. And I think there's a lot of video game things that can be done with that, where you can move your way through across this planet's surface and so on and so forth. But
all right, well, let's go ahead and move on chronologically to EA, since they were next up on Monday. I think the first thing that we got to talk about is Star Wars Battlefront.
One of the highlights of the show for me.
One of the absolute high points of the show for me, too. We saw the Hoth level.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. When I say the show, I mean E3. This is one of my sort of E3 highlights.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I took your meaning to be.
Yep.
I think that we saw the Hoth demo at EA's press conference, and I thought they did a fantastic job in bouncing between the different kinds of characters that you can play: people on the ground, people in vehicles, flying vehicles, ground vehicles, Empire and Rebel side. Going back and forth really gave you a sense of all of those, just the dynamics, like what each of those different play styles would entail. And there were a couple of moments that I really kind of lost my pants when, well, there's one moment I think
I'm laughing because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like screaming like a little kid. My wife was looking at me like I'm an idiot.
There's one moment where I think that the gameplay is taking place from an Imperial stormtrooper, and there's a one where you're just like running along and you just like look up and you're looking up the leg of an AT-AT, like way up to the cockpit, and you just see the blue sky beyond. You're like, oh my god, this is incredible.
All of it, dude. It started with in the very opening for me. Oh my god, the snowtroopers with the big long sort of masks down the front,
Yeah.
The stormtroopers for down on Hoth. And then it was just nonstop, like, oh my god, it's an ATST. Oh my god, it's an AT-AT.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the Star Destroyer is coming in and landing. It culminated for me with come on, did he really just harpoon the AT-AT and it's circling its legs?
He harpooned the AT-AT.
That's happening right now, and you're flying that speeder.
Yeah, it was good times, man. It was really good times. I don't know.
And then comes Vader.
Yeah, and everything just went off the hook. But I loved what I saw. I absolutely loved what I saw. And I know that there are still people saying, but there's no space dogfights. And I'm sorry, I did not come away from watching that demo thinking, oh, I could like this game if only space dogfights. I have to say that there's plenty there for me to get into.
Dude, it is everything I want in this sense, and I know that there are people who want more. But I felt so connected on Hoth with the music, and the locale.
The music
and everything
was a big part of both those demos.
Everything render and likewise, when I see Endor footage and not Tatooine,
yes, the not Tatooine planet,
yes, which is Tatooine as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's Tatooine, whatever.
It's like, and with the it just feels like the Star Wars that I grew up with, in like the best possible way, and I'm super, super excited to read more about people's hands-on and there's hands-on at E3, yeah?
I believe so. I'll double check, but
I think there was too.
I'm pretty sure there was.
But and to learn more about it, Brent, I'm super. I can't wait for this game. I'm super jazzed.
What about Mass Effect Andromeda? Really, not a lot there. We got I guess a cinematic teaser trailer. Looks like it's probably in-game stuff. I mean, it didn't seem like. It didn't seem so over the top that it might not be in-engine cinematics. I don't know, but anyway, just a few details on that. What was your take?
It was really, I mean, this is not, although I wasn't explicitly aware of Mass Effect Andromeda, it's no shock to me that there's another Mass Effect game, and what was there wasn't enough to get me jazzed.
Right.
So I'm eager to see more, and I'm certainly not disappointed or let down. It just kind of was like, that makes sense, another Mass Effect game. I'll be curious to see when they actually show me more.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. I was talking to Tony about this last night, and he was asking, like, how excited are you? And I said, I'm not excited really yet. I want some more details and just kind of find out what direction they're going in, and is it going to be more of a role playing game, or is it gonna be? Well, I don't know. I mean, I know I'm going to get shit for saying this, but I thought the series lost some of what I liked as it went on. And, if it's just going to be like, if it's going to be still moving in the direction past where Mass Effect 3 was, I don't know. I don't know how excited I'm going to be, but certainly some of the things they're talking about sound promising, but again, more details. Mirror's Edge. It's been a really interesting and cool journey to see Mirror's Edge kind of coming back to life. It was a really interesting game. Obviously, did not do so great, but now that there's been a few years and a lot of clamoring for it, Mirror's Edge Catalyst is officially on the roster, and they're really kind of treating this, I guess, like a reboot, and trying to reintroduce the series. Which I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, but I hope that all of the hype and I hope that all of the interest in the game is realized in Mirror's Edge Catalyst, because I'm very happy that they are doing a follow up, and hopefully it's going to pay off and spawn a new series of games, because there were some really, really great gameplay ideas in that first title.
There were, and I really enjoyed the first title, Brent. I thought it was it left something on the table. I thought there was some unrealized potential there.
Yeah,
and I'm hopeful that the new Mirror's Edge will maybe be able to pick up some of the opportunity that was missed in the first one. It looks fantastic in Frostbite. I'm excited to see it. I mean, I don't think there's much question that I will be playing the game. I want to see more of it.
What about Unravel? You want to talk about that just a little bit?
You know, I didn't see you please do, but I didn't actually see that part of the press conference, and I read about it, but I haven't had a chance to watch the video, and it sounds interesting.
I don't know how much I want to say about it because I really think you need to watch the video for it, but it was very intriguing. I mean, it certainly is one of those games that I think looks a lot more simple than it is, and I think that the ideas that they're actually exploring in the game, sort of the thematic stuff that the game is designed to be about, is really intriguing. But you should go watch. I would encourage everybody to go watch the gameplay video that they showed at the conference or during the press event. I mean, go check that out because it's one of those games that you're like, that seems like it seems like a 2D platformer. But I think that there's sort of deeper things going on there.
Certainly there's Yarn, and I didn't get to play Kirby's Epic Yarn, and I was pretty bummed about that.
Yeah, your life has never been the same. And then you started in on yourself with the iron. But anyway, let's move on to Ubisoft and what we kind of referenced at the top of the show. Maybe one of my favorite moments from the entire show is the beginning of the Ubisoft press conference and the total surprise to me that we are getting a new South Park game. I mean, of all the things that Ubisoft could have done for us, this was not one I saw coming, and I could not have been happier. I was literally bouncing in my seat watching the trailer for this, and then obviously we saw Trey and Matt come out and talk a little bit about, because they famously kind of said, like, oh, we're never making a video game again. This is terrible. And they said, like, at the very end of the process, everything sort of clicked, and they're like, oh man, like we sort of understand now, like how to make a video game, how to make a good game. And well, damn it, now we're going to have to do another one so that we can exploit this newfound knowledge. But I mean, what did you think, man? I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's just I might as well have just thrown my money at the computer screen.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, and I'm really bummed about this, dude, is that I there was the only press conference. There were two press conferences that I watched live. One of them was Sony, and I was able to watch that one beginning. That's the only conference I watched beginning to end. Yeah. And all of this is just a function of schedule. And the other one was some of the PC gaming one, and I got to it about halfway through. Yeah. And I'm really bummed that I learned about this via the web. Yeah. And not the reveal, because I know that I would have been absolutely freaking out.
You'd have lost your mind.
And so I knew about it, and then I went back and watched it, and I think what I did was Google something like, Ubisoft E3 press conference afterwards, and one of the top news posts was like Matt and Trey Parker, and I was like, wait, what? And so I knew what was happening, and then I watched the YouTube video, and it was so that was the first thing I watched of the Ubi presser, dude, and it was super awkward. I think Trey Parker comes out, and the first thing he says is like, "These first thing out of his mouth is, can I just say something? These microphones are fucking stupid." Yeah, is what he said.
They did not. They did not like their microphones.
No, and you could see that, like, and all I could think was like, Aisha Tyler's there again, who I love Aisha Tyler, but it's like she's the worst match for these press conferences.
Actually, I thought this was the best year she'd ever done. Like, honestly.
Oh, did she? Because I didn't watch it.
Of all the Ubisoft pressers I've seen her do, and I think she's done 4. This one I thought was the best match. I thought that just her whole kind of approach to it, and I just like her enthusiasm seemed right about where it was kind of sincere without seeming like too much or whatever. But I have to say that this year I didn't have any complaints about her this year.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. But anyway, dude, I couldn't. Are you kidding me? South Park was my game of the year, I believe, wasn't it?
I don't know. What? I can't remember that.
I can't remember either, but I think it might have been. I think it might have been. Or
somebody in the audience with a better memory than we have.
It was certainly in the running, but dude, I'm so excited. And then I watched the trailer, and I'm thinking like, okay, this looks very similar, but I don't really care. It's just more South Park, and that's fine. Yeah. And then he's like, wait a minute, wrong video game. We're superheroes this time. Yep. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. And I never, like you said, Trey and Matt like swore up and down they would never do another video game, and so this was a huge surprise. And what an amazing surprise.
I'm down for it, man. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Take my money,
and I'll keep taking it. I'm so happy.
No question.
what did you think about The Division? We saw the Dark Zone gameplay demo in quotes, because you know how they do these things. But anyway, what did you think about the gameplay Ubisoft showed off of The Division?
Yeah, I saw, there's a lot of people who, not a lot of people, but I saw a couple of people on Outlaw Gamers, right? Like, I couldn't be less interested in The Division anymore.
Yeah.
I'm done with it. I actually thought the gameplay was great. The one, as you said to me prior to recording, Brendan, is I'm kind of sick of the canned gameplay demos, and I want to hear a little more hands-on.
I want to hear hands-on from the show floor gameplay impressions. That's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. It still looks beautiful. I love the UI. I want to see more of it. I'm less enthusiastic than I've been over the last 2 years, just because it's becoming laborious after 2 years.
Yeah.
It's no different than what we've seen. Honestly, the piece that's different to me is almost what I think is a bit of a mistake, and I think Ubisoft thinks it's a selling point. Is so you watch all this gameplay video, these guys don't shoot each other, whatever, everybody works together. And then in the last minute, these people turn around and are like, you know what? Screw you. I'm going to blow you up. And I thought to myself, like, that's exactly the kind of thing that makes me not want to play a game like this.
Right.
Like,
right.
So we don't kill each other. We decide to work together. And then you just decide to be a colossal fucking dick and shoot me. And that's the kind of stuff that makes me not want to play games like this. And so I think that that was antithetical to me wanting to buy the game. And I don't think it was a smart move on Ubisoft's part. But other than that, I think the game looked like it's looked for the last 12 months. And so I would like to see more, or just give us the goddamn game. Which we now know is I think it was March 8th.
Yeah, it's November 5th next year. Anyway.
No. Right. Yeah. Right. It's scheduled. They gave a date, March 8th, 2016, but we'll see.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm kind of like you. I mean, I'm still really intrigued with the idea of what The Division represents. I'm still really intrigued by the gameplay potential, but I do have to say that I guess I feel like I'm not going to invest myself emotionally in getting too excited right now. Yep. I am still really curious to see people's impressions, people who don't work for Ubisoft, talking about the gameplay from the floor.
Yeah, I agree.
Rainbow Six Siege. We saw some more of that. We saw a little bit. They kind of showed us a story trailer for it where they're kind of trying to talk about how it fits into the Rainbow Six mythos and all that. We found out that there's going to be a beta available for that on September 24th this year. Rainbow Six Siege still seems to be very, very polarizing among people. Of all the people that I've personally spoken to about the show, I'm the only one who still finds something cool in that attack and defend gameplay mechanic that Rainbow Six Siege is based around. Has anything changed for you based on what you saw?
No, it hasn't, and the game continues to not be of interest to me.
Yeah,
and I'm saying this with the caveat that I could actually see myself ending up buying this game,
right?
Because if all the guys that I play with end up buying it and are like, dude, it's so dope, and it's what they're all playing,
right? I
could see myself maybe buying it and playing it with them, but personally, no, there's nothing about this game that's appealing to me.
What about the game that Ubi closed the show with, which I have to say did get my attention, and I do really like a lot of the things they were talking about, and that was Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Yes, absolutely.
I've said it before in many games. I love a game that gives you a goal, gives you tools, and says, okay, however you want to do it, go do it. And that was Ghost Recon Wildlands. That's what it was. That's what it was all about. In this case, the idea was to bust up a major cocaine distribution facility, I don't know, a lab or whatever, and then take out a white-hatted, bad, nefarious guy, a ruffian in a white cowboy hat. And we saw 3 different approaches in how to do that. We saw a strategic assault approach. We saw like a chaos from all sides assault approach. We saw a stealth approach. There were a lot of intriguing possibilities raised there. I'm very interested to find out more about the scope of the game and and what they have planned. But just based on the initial concept that they're pitching, they've got my interest, certainly.
Well, and this is pretty spot on for the Ghost Recon series in that regard, Brent. As you said, like giving you an objective, giving you tools, and saying, okay,
right,
go at it how you want. But
hopefully it differs from the Ghost Recon series and that this game will actually come out.
Well, and let me be clear, I think it harkens back to the Ghost Recons of yore a little bit in that way, which were much more kind of along those lines. And I think the game looks beautiful. And I mean, I loved that. A lot of the older Ghost Recon games were exactly as you described. They were, whether it be a mansion or a compound or whatever that you had to infiltrate, get something out of in some way, and you could do it any way you wanted. And you could easily spend 30 minutes planning an attack.
I'm all for it. I love that kind of strategy.
I agree, and I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing more on this game. It was a pleasant surprise.
I got to thank Esteban for. I just stole that joke right up from under him. He told that to me, and I laughed my head off. But anyway, let's move on to the Sony press conference because, like you were talking about earlier, Microsoft and Sony really kind of swapped sides this year, and Sony was just like games. They talked a little bit about services with PlayStation View. They talked a little bit about Morpheus, but only a little bit. But it was mostly games, ball-to-the-wall games. And they started the press conference with everyone's favorite imaginary, not so much anymore game, The Last Guardian. And we saw a gameplay demo for The Last Guardian. And I thought that it was pretty astonishing to see that open the show, and you could see or you could hear the anticipation in the audience as you know, guys saying, okay, so this first game it's been really highly anticipated for years, and people have, and like everybody's losing their minds because they all know what's coming, and sure enough, Last Guardian. Given that I guess it was 2009 when this game was first teased or something.
Yeah, so when you and I were at E3 together. Standing there, I remember standing there watching the trailer in astonishment.
Given that it was 6 years ago that this thing was first showed off, what are your thoughts on it now, having seen this gameplay demo?
So, I was disappointed, Brent.
Okay.
I was not... I was not blown away by the fact that we were watching it, honestly, because when it started, I was like, yeah, okay, so let's just see now, 6 years later.
Yeah.
And when we started watching it, honestly, like I felt so in the first 2 minutes or whatever, after the Griffin door came out or whatever the hell it's called. After the Griffin came out. And,
that's right. A bunch of British school children wielding robes came pouring out of a giant door.
After the Griffin thing came out, in the first 30 seconds after that, Brent, all I could think was, so you had that little boy yelling whatever the hell he was yelling.
Yeah.
And all I could think the whole time was, this is going to become the Jason meme.
You're right, exactly.
Right? Jason. I mean, I just was sitting there going, just shut the hell up, dude. Stop yelling the same thing over and over. And then it turned into, and it was like a series of these things. So then it turned, so that was slightly annoying. And then it turned into really awkward, what looked like awkward camera angles and difficult to control camera angles. I mean, you could almost see the person holding the analog stick, swinging the camera around, and the camera compensating. And then to top it off was these sort of clunky movements. I thought, it didn't feel fluid, and I didn't, because of the whole Jason thing. I got none of that sense of emotional companionship or ties that I got from that initial. From the initial trailer we saw, and by the time it was done, I was bored.
The thing that I was thinking about in watching this is that they're really going out of their way to not say too much about the story because they want to keep that under wraps because it's integral to the experience to, I guess, experience it fresh. And they really are not talking about much of that, and it's difficult in a way to market the game like that because that's the thing I'm interested in. In theory, what you're going to be sold on is this unique emotional experience that going on this journey is going to give you. But if they can't really tease you on the emotional journey, then how do they get you to buy in? And the gameplay that they showed off, I really didn't understand what was the goal of what was trying to be accomplished. I remember thinking at one point when the kid jumps off of the bridge onto or the walkway onto that smaller walkway with the track, and there's this big tower with wheels on it, and he starts pushing it. I remember thinking, like, what are you doing? Like, this thing's gonna like roll down to the end and it's just gonna like crash off. Like what is the purpose?
You're trying to get somewhere.
What you're trying to accomplish
like,
here, and I just like I didn't understand I didn't understand the goal of what we were seeing, both literally in the gameplay, but also the goal of showing us. I mean, I understand the goal of showing the gameplay was to get us excited about the game, but I'm not sure that this was the best piece of footage they could have shown us to do that. Although I
agree,
understand
Brett.
that just showing another cinematic trailer would have been maybe even a worse idea, because people are like, oh yeah, you can show us, cinematic trailers for 6 years running.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that we've actually got a game on our hands. But anyway,
no, I agree, man, and I just think that like the emotional piece of it, you're right, is what has been so compelling about this game, and those things that I described and what you're describing are the things that sort of like pull you out of the emotion and make the game aspects of it stick out. And for a game like this, I don't think you want to highlight the game mechanics. I think you want to highlight the emotional connection. And even in the absence of divulging story, I think they still might be able to do a better job of that. And instead, what they showed me is like how some of these like not quite polished things that are super gamey are going to pull me out of that. And so it wasn't compelling at all to me.
So let's move on to you want to talk about a moment that brought the house down. You want to talk about a moment that has been a decade plus in the making, when they started talking Final Fantasy shit. And the first thing they showed off was that World of Final Fantasy. And then they're like, oh, but we got something else that we're cooking up. And they start showing that cinematic trailer. And then you start hearing the music kick in, and you're just like, shut up. Like, no, come on. Not really. Not really. And then it's like, oh my God, it's Final Fantasy VII. And you get down to the end of that trailer, and it's like remake. Like big letters, big sound, Final Fantasy VII remake. And that entire building lost their minds. And
I don't even really understand 100%, Brent. This is one that was lost on me, honestly, because I've never played a Final Fantasy game. I've never played any Final Fantasy games. And so are they remaking the entire, like, they're remaking the whole game?
They're remaking Final Fantasy VII.
From the ground up. They're like basically starting over. They're making the same story, same mechanics, but they're going to just remake the whole game.
That's my impression. Although they may have clarified some of this in interviews and so forth that I haven't had a chance to read yet. So there may be some more details floating around. But yes, they are remaking the game using the story and everything. But I'm sure they're going to be using one of their modern game engines and graphics and so forth. But I mean, like this is perhaps the most beloved video game of all time. Like, this is definitely...
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, that it's considered the greatest Final Fantasy of all time. And I
mean, this is it. And like, people have been clamoring for this for decades, or it has been decades plural, but because the game only came out, like, what was it, 15, 16 years ago? Anyway,
yeah, I totally get it. It's just one of those things, like, I felt like I was like the kid outside looking in the window with my lower lip, like, oh, I'm glad you guys are all having fun. I don't get what's going on right now. I get that it's cool, and I get that I'm not a part of it.
Yeah, you can't. I don't think you can overemphasize what a big fucking deal that was. Anyway, so yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I believe they said this is going to come first to... It's coming first to PlayStation 4, but it's not going to be exclusive to PlayStation 4. Something that will be exclusive to PlayStation 4, actually kind of an interesting thing with this, is the new title from Guerrilla Games. When they initially introduced Hellman, wow, what is his last name? Like Hunst? I can't remember his last name. Anyway, the guy that runs Guerrilla Games. Yep. When they initially announced him and he came on stage, I was kind of cringing a little bit, and I was thinking to myself, I really don't need another Killzone game. I would be totally fine without another Killzone game. And so when he came out and started talking about it's a rare thing for a successful developer to get the chance to create a new franchise, suddenly I got interested. And so what we saw was a trailer with presumably some gameplay. Certainly it's being represented as gameplay for a game called Horizon Zero Dawn, which I kind of took my takeaway from this is kind of like, that's interesting. It's almost like building off the idea of Enslaved Odyssey to the West. It is a distant future, post-apocalyptic sort of scenario where the civilization that we are a part of now has long since faded and nature is taking back over. But there is a man versus machine component to this conflict that is occurring. There are sentient machines roaming. We see these animal-like machines, almost like dinosaurs. I mean, certainly on that scale, like the main battle that takes place is between what I presume is the lead character of the game, a redheaded woman with a bow made out of used car parts, and a large Dinobot. And then there were like kind of a herd of smaller Dinobots earlier in the trailer. So I'm very intrigued by the scenario. Third-person gameplay looked cool. There could definitely be some fun there. But this was definitely one that got my attention. And I'm glad to see something different coming from Guerrilla.
I agree, Brent. This is one of the highlights of the show for me, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, so my first thought as this was unveiling, or as it began playing, was Turok.
Yes, I was thinking Turok too.
And I would love. I want another Turok game.
Right.
I want
this might be
a Turok game. And so I am super intrigued by this. It is, for those of you that haven't seen the trailer yet, go watch the trailer. But I want to clarify that post-apocalyptic in this case is very, 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 very far. It's like 1,000 years post-apocalypse, not what we consider to be this sort of like gray, dreary, immediately post-apocalyptic world. This is many, many hundreds of thousand years after an apocalypse where the humans, as Brent said, are not a dominant species anymore. But it's a very bright color palette. I love the sort of Turok feel to it, even though the dinosaurs are not natural dinosaurs, but they're machines. It just felt very different to me, Brent. I love that the protagonist, and I'm not, this isn't something I like look for in a game, but I love that the protagonist is female. She was badass.
Yep.
I love the bow and arrow
this year. I'm in between like Dishonored 2 and the twin sister that was introduced for Assassin's Creed. There definitely seemed to be like I noticed a lot of female protagonists being put at the forefront of a lot of these trailers.
Yeah, which is great, and I thought this character was badass, and it makes it. The reason I like it is because it's different, Brent, and this is what I liked about this. It felt different than everything else at the show this year, and the female protagonist feels different because it doesn't feel like yet another sort of stereotypical male protagonist. So everything about this feels different, and I'm very excited about this. I was bored with Killzone 2.
Yeah.
Killzone also. I liked Killzone 2 a lot. I thought the Killzone team did amazing stuff with the multiplayer, which makes me feel good about this project in particular.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to see more about this. I played Killzone Shadowfall, didn't love it at all, got bored, stopped playing it after just a few hours.
Right.
And I'm hoping that's not the case with this. It's a very talented team, and this is a very intriguing IP. And I loved how a big part of the opening of that game trailer was about setting up the world and the story. Mm-hmm. And it felt like I was getting drawn into that world and the story, and it wasn't about the crazy gameplay. And then the gameplay came about, and it was super fun and interesting to watch. And so this was one of the highlights of the show for me.
Yeah, to me, like a real... I was thinking Shadow of Mordor, and of course, obviously that's got Assassin's Creed overtones as well. But just that it seems like you got a big open world you're sneaking through. There's going to be opportunistic things that kind of come along, things that find you, sneaking through the tall grass towards the Dinobots and all that. There was a lot there for me to get interested in also. One thing that we did not see any actual gameplay for, we saw an extended trailer, and we certainly got a lot of talk about what they have plans for. But something that I'm interested to hear more about is Hitman. And IO Interactive said a couple of things about Hitman. Obviously, all of the things are going to be there that you expect to be in a Hitman game. But some of the things they said that really caught my attention was this talk of a persistent game world that's going to grow as time goes on. As more and more things are added to it, the world will become more dense, and there'll be more and more things to do, more contracts and so forth. And I'm very intrigued by that. Now, to be clear, they're not talking about some sort of Grand Theft Auto-esque vast open world. That's not what they're saying. But they're simply talking about, I think, almost maybe like episodic content in a way. They're talking about this game being like an ongoing experience as opposed to a game that gets released and then everybody plays. They're talking about this new Hitman being almost more of like a service model or something. I mean, this is my speculation. This is not what they said, but what they're talking about sounds to me an awful lot like you're going to get the initial content to play, but they are saying there's going to just be like constant regular updates to that gameplay experience that you're going to be able to take advantage of. And I'm very interested in that as an idea. I like the idea of a game that, well, honestly, like Star Wars Commander. Like Star Wars Commander is like forever coming up with like these tournaments and these challenge modes and things like that to get you back into the game. It's like, oh crap, I got, they threw in a bunch of new stuff and there's a tournament this weekend. I got to get back in there and play. I find that to be a really effective thing, and I'm curious to see a AAA game do something more along that model as opposed to just map packs and DLC like they normally do. I'm curious to see if this is going to be a different experience from that.
Yeah, this one for me, Brent, like this one has to do a lot more work to convince me. I wasn't very impressed with the last Hitman game. I've played the previous Hitman games, the early ones. I enjoyed them. I wasn't insane about them the way I think a lot of people are, which is totally understandable. It just at the time wasn't my bag, but and so I feel like they have to do a lot of work for me. And honestly, it's weird because the sort of model. So I thought more of Destiny than say Star Wars Commander with that ongoing content model.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The ongoing content model, and because I thought of Destiny,
you didn't think good things.
Well, right. I mean, the ongoing content model is if you're in love with the IP, and the game, and it's like say it was Batman, for example, or Uncharted or something that you're just totally in love with, and what they're putting out is super compelling. Yep. Then it's just fucking awesome. But if you're not, it feels like a cash grab. And just a way to extend, you know what I mean? And so,
yeah, I guess I can see your point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so whatever. I mean, I
feel that way about it, but I get what you're saying.
Right. And it doesn't do anything to, like, that's not if you had told me that if Naughty Dog came out and said they're going to keep extending the story with 6 more hours of single player campaign missions over the course of a year, I'd be like, that's incredible because Uncharted is the greatest game ever and I love it. Hitman, because I'm sort of not all that impressed with the game itself, the addition of that year of content, and I think that's what they're saying is through 2016. Yeah. The addition of that year of content is utterly meaningless. And so I need to be convinced about the game first. Right. It was an intriguing trailer, but I just haven't been impressed with the IP as of late, and so I need more convincing.
I'll be curious to see. I'll be curious to see some actual gameplay from this and see what actually comes of it. I like the idea of it, but whether or not I actually like the game remains to be seen.
Right.
One thing that
just give us the game. Just give us the goddamn game.
No Man's Sky was really, on stage at Sony's press event, and
that looks so good.
I want this game so bad. They did not announce a release date at E3, and
although they said they're gonna, he said we'll announce one soon.
He said very soon, and he didn't say what the reason was. He kind of started to during his interview at the PC Gaming Show, but he didn't actually go into the reason. But he said that they're going to announce a release date soon. What they showed at the E3 press conference, I believe they described as alpha gameplay. And the thing for me is it is such a simple sort of idea, but I remember when he used the warp drive in his ship and he goes to this different star, this distant star, excuse me, and there's a planet. You come out of warp and there's a planet underneath you. And I was looking at that planet. You can see these continents and everything, and the oceans and so forth. And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, if you just pointed your ship down at that planet and just hit the accelerator, you could go right down to the surface and you could land in some forest, and there's probably some herd of elephants or something like that wandering around that you could take pictures of, or something like that. And then he points the ship at the planet and he just descends goes right through the atmosphere, and then suddenly you're over the continent, then suddenly you're even closer to the land, you're over this field, and he lands, and he hops out and starts wandering around, and just that the concept of that experience of you're wandering around this planet, and there's a beacon over here, and you can do something with that, but you're also kind of getting menaced by these robot sentries. But at any time, you can go back and hop in your ship, take off from the surface, go up into orbit, out into the solar system, and there is an entire universe of planets out there, just like this one. I want that experience so badly, and I just want to know when we're going to get it. I just want to know when the game's coming out, so I can gauge how excited to let myself get at this point. Because I'm holding back right now because I'm afraid it's going to be like 2017.
Yeah, no, really? You think so?
No, that's kind of my worst case scenario.
No, I don't think so.
I think it's next year.
I actually would be surprised if it's not first quarter next year. Honestly, because I think they're so close, but I could be wrong. I have nothing else to say about this game, Brent. The game looks phenomenal. They keep showing it at every E3, and I keep wanting to play it more every time I see it, although they don't keep showing anything new. They're really not showing much new. I mean, they just keep saying the same thing over and over, which is, look how amazingly large this is. Other people may have never even seen this planet. Yeah. It's procedurally generated, and I'm like, okay, yep, Here, seriously, I will send you the money now. Right. Save yourself some time.
Just like shut up and like stuff it in their mouth.
Yeah, totally.
Now, one thing that we do need to say on this that Sean did reveal during the PC Gaming Show is he confirmed that No Man's Sky is coming out day and date for PS4 and for PC.
Yes,
and they didn't,
which is great.
They didn't talk about any other platforms yet, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, which is great news. I mean, I will likely, I guess, get it on the PC.
I probably would as well.
Yeah.
Saw a little bit from Firewatch during the Sony press conference, and you go ahead. You go first.
Nothing. Again, I continue to be intrigued by this game. I find this to be what we've seen so far. I find this game very intriguing.
That's the exact word.
Yeah, I mean, I need to see more. I'm not ready to plop down my money right now.
I'm ready to plop down my money.
But I find it very intriguing. I love the banter. I love the look. I love the aesthetic, the art direction, the feel of the game.
I love the intrigue. I love the intrigue, the mystery. You know.
Yeah, I want to see more of it, and I want to know. I would love a better idea of when it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm all for this. I love that gameplay, that 20 minutes of gameplay or so that we talked about on the show. I don't know, a month or two ago. Yep. I loved that, and I loved this, the whole thing with, hey, this phone line's been cut. What, you're not back in your tower? No? Who is? Just, I mean, it in a game that presents so much of what you're experiencing as mundane, given that is sort of the baseline, those simple little things create such a sense of tension and anxiety. I find it like so deliciously creepy, and just the mystery of it and everything. I'm very, very excited to see more of this game. Very briefly, I'm going to just mention Ronin. That was one of the games that was shown off during that Devolver Digital sizzle reel. I thought Ronin looked really interesting. To me, it looked like a mashup of Mark of the Ninja and Gunpoint. A lot of cool looking kinds of gameplay. That's one of those things I'm going to be looking to get some more details, maybe some more gameplay of this week. What about Dream from Telltale Games? From
Media Molecule.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, continues to look awesome. I think I love games like this. Games like Journey. I mean, obviously, I love Media Molecule's previous titles, although I haven't played Tearaway, but it looks awesome. So I love the fact that they're essentially trying to create a video game that replicates the emotional experience of dreaming. I just think that's fucking, just saying that out loud is like, that's awesome. that anybody is doing that, let alone such a well-established, talented company as Media Molecule. And the idea, of course, that like you're going to get to play everybody else's dreams. It's awesome. It wasn't enough for me. I want to see more. I want to know more about how that plays out as a game, and more about what the creation tools look like and all of that stuff. But it's home run. I want to see more. Yeah, I want to see more too. I'm very curious, and it's a riveting sort of concept for a game. I just found myself kind of flabbergasted, like, wow, what an amazing endeavor to even attempt, to recreate the experience of dreaming. Yeah, because
like that in and of itself is almost like, I don't know, like I don't even know where I would start, you know?
Right.
First I'd create a giant Bigfoot, and then anyway. So one of these days I'll tell you the story about the one reoccurring dream that I've had throughout my life. And it's got Sasquatch in it. But anyway, I thought speaking of big things, nice segue into Black Ops 3. New Call of Duty showing up on Sony stage and finding out that the Call of Duty franchise and all of the exclusive first on content, the map packs and everything coming first now to Sony's PlayStation 4. A pretty big coup, considering that entire model was basically invented on Microsoft consoles. And I was pretty surprised. I was pretty surprised that happened. Now, Tony, I was talking to him about this last night, and he was very he was not as impressed. He kind of thought, people seem like they're finally starting to lose interest in Call of Duty. Like sales are kind of dipping the last two games, and Microsoft probably didn't even want it. I don't know if that's the case or not. Like I don't know if I'm going that far with it, but I concede his point that perhaps it is not quite as important as it once was. But nonetheless, it was still a pretty big surprise to see the new Call of Duty debut on Sony stage and find out about the various map pack plans and all that. What did you think, Lauren? Any thoughts on this?
I was more in the camp of Tony. When I saw this sort of start to happen, my take on it at least was, and I have no idea what the reality is behind the scenes, but my take on it was kind of like, oh, Microsoft didn't want it anymore, and now Sony's scooping it up and presenting it as as this big coup. And yeah, I'm sure they're still going to make a ton of money off of it or whatever, but it just didn't seem like a big deal to me at all.
Gotcha. Something that didn't seem like a big deal at all to Sony was Morpheus. Where the fuck was Morpheus?
Yes.
They barely mentioned it during their press conference. And frankly, I was actually kind of stunned because with all of the momentum for VR, and if you watch the Oculus press conference, and if you watched the PC gaming show, VR is on a lot of people's minds as we get closer and closer to actually seeing retail units in the hands of consumers. And Morpheus is supposed to be out later this year, right?
I don't know that, honestly.
I thought that it was, but I'll double check.
I don't think there's a release date for Morpheus yet.
Okay.
No.
Anyway, but whenever Morpheus is supposed to come out, I guess what I'm thinking is that Sony at this point is going to have to. They're going to have like an entire. Okay, I'm sorry. No, I see here 2016. So it's not until next year. So maybe that's why they didn't make such a big deal about it this year. I was under the impression it was coming out later this year, and I was like, how are you not selling the bejesus out of this thing? But if it's not coming out until next year, then maybe it's a smarter idea to not get people all excited about it and then hurry up and wait. But I was surprised they didn't do more with Morpheus at their press conference.
Yeah, I was too, and it's unfortunate. I would have liked to have seen more, but they focused really heavily on the games themselves and talked about non-gaming things very little. And one of the things they did talk about that I thought was interesting was PlayStation View.
Yeah.
I want to know more about details, but I'm actually a little surprised they didn't make a bigger deal out of it, because if what they were saying is what's actually happening,
no, View is a big deal.
That they're becoming like the first real service to offer you a la carte channels.
I would love to have PlayStation View. It's not available for me. I would love to have PlayStation View. Like when you actually look at the price model and like the content that they have right now, it's pretty compelling.
What makes it? Is it a regional thing?
Yeah, I think it's only available in select cities, right? Well, they announced it was going to be like in LA and San Francisco, I think.
Oh, that's right. It's 3 cities right now, and then they're adding 2 more cities.
Yeah,
but then I didn't really actually, to be honest with you, totally understand that. Like So, and then is it going to go nationwide at some point?
I hope.
In the near future?
I hope, because I think it's a great value. Like in terms of like what I watch on television, pretty much everything that I would want out of a TV package is there on PlayStation View. It's like $60 a month, and it's kind of like this bizarre cloud DVR sort of thing where it's not quite on demand in the way that you'd think of through like Netflix or something like that, but you basically have this cloud DVR that that just records programs, and so you go back later and stream the programs down from the cloud, but they have the commercials and everything intact from the original broadcast.
Yeah, so I was just pulled up something to read, Brent, and part was confusing to me too. Like when it launched, it says something about like when they launch, only Machinima, Showtime, and Fox Soccer will be available a la carte.
Yeah. Everything else is like bundled.
Right,
it's like
right.
You pay this rate and you get these 30 channels.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
so
whatever
the
the
details
number
are
is.
fuzzy, but I think it's interesting. And so those were the two things I kind of talked about that weren't games.
Yeah.
But then they jump back into the games, and we got Battlefront again, and never too much Battlefront.
Now one thing that is interesting to note is that both at the EA press conference where they showed the Hoth level, and then at the Sony press conference where they showed the Not Tatooine level,
yes,
in both cases they pointed out that those gameplay sessions were recorded directly off of PlayStation 4.
Yes. Yep. And looking incredible.
And looking really good. Frostbite looks really good on the PlayStation 4.
Which is why I cannot wait to play it on PC.
Exactly. Although, you say that, and, look what happened to the last PC game that DICE did. But anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I thought it looked fantastic. I love the survival mode that we saw in the Sony press event for Battlefront, similar to the moment I was talking about in Hoth, where you look up and you see the AT-AT right above you. There was a moment in this where they're really kind of starting to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you. The AT-STs are coming out and the heavy troopers and so forth. And there's a moment where somebody just kind of turns around. There's a bunch of people coming down the canyon at them, and they're floating in the background, just hovering in very low orbit, is that Star Destroyer. And I don't know, just something about that really, really captured my imagination. I just thought I want to play. I want to have that experience. I want to play this so badly. And I thought that the music score from John Williams was used so perfectly throughout the demo. I'm sold on this game. I'm really, really excited for Battlefront. Officially,
I am too. I am too, Brent. Absolutely. So a couple more games in the Sony press conference,
big ones.
Both of which are big. Although, again, this was the announcement of Shenmue 3 is something that I was sort of the guy on the outside. I never played Shenmue 1 or 2, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But to me, but they announced
Shenmue's a big deal.
Yeah, and I know that it just wasn't to me. And so, but they announced the Kickstarter, Brent. They were asking for $2 million, and I think within 24 hours they were $2.5 million.
I think they had it the next morning. I think they had.
Yeah, and there's definitely. I was reading articles about how Sony is also paying for a lot of this game, and so I don't understand. I would really like to know the intricacies of that relationship, because they sure made it seem like, hey, we need you to make this game, and you need to sort of prove to us that you want this game made, and we need $2 million to do it. But I've been doing some reading that intimates that Sony is also putting up a lot of money, and I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that. But it's not divulged in the Kickstarter. It doesn't say that. It doesn't, as far as I know. So I would like to know more about it, but they made their money immediately. The game's getting made, no question. Yep. And I think it's great for those of you that are super excited about it. Shenmue is one of those games that casts a long shadow. I mean, you talk about, there's a lot of people that really bemoan the Dreamcast and the demise of Sega as a console manufacturer, and what a good console the Dreamcast really was. And Shenmue was one of its all-star titles, if not the. I mean, Shenmue is like the title that people point to as being truly amazing on the Dreamcast, and almost everybody that I know that had a Dreamcast loved that game. And I want to know if I'm going to be able to play the game not knowing the first two Shenmues.
Yeah, well, hopefully somebody will come up with some way for you to address that problem.
Yeah, I mean, because that's a very story. They were correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a very story driven game, and it's they were emphasizing the fact that this is a continuation of that story.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Speaking of the continuation of the story,
God, dude.
Sony closed the press conference.
Awkward moment.
The only
awkward moment.
I said the exact same thing, and Esteban says something to me that I thought was very wise. He said, no, it was great, because now you know what you saw was definitely gameplay. Because it crashed the first time they tried to run it. I'm like, that's actually a good point.
That's true, yes.
It was definitely a gameplay demo. It was not a pre-rendered nothing, because they had to restart the thing. But despite that early hiccup, Uncharted 4 looked fucking incredible.
Oh my God, it looks so good, Brent. It looked like everything I loved about Uncharted 2.
Yeah, it was Drake and Sully and a downhill slope and a giant armored truck and a beat to shit 4x4 and good luck, see you later. That's what it was. It was a really epic gameplay. I mean, you talk about, okay, like The Last Guardian. It's like, show me gameplay that's going to get me excited for the game. Uncharted 4 knew what they knew what to do with that.
Yeah, dude, it looks so good. I have to be honest with you, Brent. I shouldn't say this to our listeners because I tell people not to do this, but I tried not to do it, Brent, and I couldn't help myself.
You pre-ordered, didn't you?
I pre-ordered the Uncharted collection.
Oh, you got the HD thing?
Yes, for the PS4.
Well, I don't think that's because you've already got those games. I mean, you know what you're getting there.
Well, I don't have them anymore, and that's why I pre-ordered it, because I thought to myself, I don't give a shit if it's not any better than the last ones. I just want to have them in my library.
Yeah.
And I don't currently have them in my library anymore because I sold my PS3, so I pre-ordered it. And I love these games so much, Brent. And this got me so fucking excited to play Uncharted 4, and I'm so pissed it got pushed into 2016.
I am too, but there's plenty of stuff coming out this year that is going to keep us busy.
There definitely is, but
that's the thing.
Good.
It's coming out early 2016, so it'll be good. It'll be like in that early part of the year where you got lots of time to play it.
Yeah, I hope so. It looked incredible.
So I think we're just about wrapping up here, but we'll just talk a little bit about some of the press conferences from the next day. I won't make you sit through Nintendo because I know you don't really care about Nintendo. And
well, honestly, Brent, I try and watch Nintendo, at least some of it, and read up on it every E3 because I know it's important to our listeners, and I do want to at least talk about it, but I did not have time to watch it, and so I didn't see any of the Nintendo digital event.
They didn't do much. I mean, even big Nintendo fans that I'm friends with, like Tony, like Esteban, they were both kind of, Nintendo didn't do much. So
really, yeah. Well, good. Then I don't feel quite as guilty for failing you people. I'm sorry.
Square Enix, they held a very low key press event. I mean, it was a small theater with a podium. And people came to the podium and said things, and that they showed some gameplay and stuff like that. But I mean, it was really, by comparison, even to EA or Ubisoft, it was. I mean, okay, I'll put it this way: it made the PC gaming show seem exciting. That's what the Square Enix event was.
Whoa, really?
But what they showed was actually kind of cool. They showed Just Cause 3, which is fucking awesome.
Oh my God, it looked good.
They talked about the Final Fantasy VII Remake is also coming to iOS, which I'm very excited about.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
They talked about Deus Ex Mankind Divided. We saw more from that, which is fucking awesome. Yep. And they talked about a new entry in the Go series. They talked about Hitman Go, and then Hitman Sniper just came out, which is kind of the successor to that. Not really a sequel because it's a different kind of gameplay. But they talked about a new game called Lara Croft Go, which is the next sort of iteration of that series of mobile games. They showed some gameplay from that, and it looks very interesting. I'm very curious about that. I having had such a great experience with Hitman Go and having heard good things about Hitman Sniper, I'm excited to see what they're going to do with Lara Croft in that sort of form factor.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was interesting to see as well. For me, I didn't watch the presser as a presser, but what would have been the highlight of that presser for me, and is one of the highlights of the show of E3, is Just Cause 3. I'm super excited. And it's funny because they literally, what'd you say? It was epic. Yeah, I mean, they literally just were like, we guys, essentially, we listened to what you said. We listened to what you said, and we made shit more blow upable and more fun to play with. But I do want to say, Brent, one of the things I was thinking as I was watching the gameplay video of Just Cause 3 is, games have strengths, right? Certain games have strengths that are around their story. Certain games have strengths around gameplay. Super Meat Boy comes to mind. Certain games have strengths around maybe a little bit of a combination of both, or the open world aspect of it, or whatever. But I think one thing that is underrated in gaming is how compelling, really well done motion within the game is. How you move through the game and how much fun that can be, and how far that can take you in keeping a compelling experience. games like Sunset Overdrive I think about games like Saints Row 4, where you're able to leap and fly through the games. It's just super compelling, and just the fun doesn't stop. And Just Cause 2 had that. But it had that in spades, and they've really looked to improve upon that, Brent. And between the wingsuit, making more stable parachute, multiple grapples, you will be able to fly and maneuver throughout the game world in the ways you could in Just Cause 2, but even better. And I can't say enough about how compelling an experience it is to move through a game world like that, and to just and how compelling it was in Just Cause 2. And I love the fact that they basically said, okay, we heard you. You want to grapple things together. We get it. You want to be able to grapple a helicopter to a truck and create a wrecking ball. You want to be able to fly through the air longer and more stable.
Here's a wingsuit.
So you can... Here's a wingsuit, and we'll stabilize the parachute so you can actually fight from the parachute even better. Or you can move through the world. I mean, you could stay aloft forever by just parachuting at having your parachute open at a low level and using the grapple hook to like pull you down a street kind of thing. Yep. And they basically just said, we get it. We heard everything you want, and we're going to do all of that. And I think it just looks awesome.
It did. There was absolutely, I got nothing to add to it. I agree 100%. Here at the very end, let's just talk briefly about the PC gaming show. It was a very different kind of vibe, and I think that was probably by design. And I don't know that. I think for what they intended to do, I think that they succeeded. They did it as sort of a late night talk show style presentation where they've got a host behind a desk. People come out, sit on the couch, and they talk. And insofar as that goes, I think it went fine. I think they had some good interviews. We found out some interesting details, and I thought some really good questions were asked. They did show off some trailers. They showed off some gameplay. They had several demos, and insofar as what they were attempted to do, I do think that they succeeded. Having said that, when you look at any of the other press events from E3, it was markedly more low key. It was very conspicuously different. Maybe that was what they were going for. Maybe they really wanted to stand apart. They certainly did, but I wouldn't blame people for thinking that it was a little bit on the boring side, unless you were just really, really hyper into the specific things that you were getting details on. There was a lot. There was a lot there that frankly was like, I don't really care about these games, and I'll tune out for 15 minutes until the next guest or whatever.
Yeah, so I came to this about halfway through, as I mentioned, Brent, and I watched it, and I have to say I walked away disappointed. And there's a couple things that disappointed me in particular. Number one, I was a little disappointed by the games that I saw, at least in the second half. There were certainly PC games and certainly big games on PC, like games like Diablo, games from Bohemia and Tripwire, and StarCraft, and but they were it felt like all of the games that were PC exclusives only, or super designed to be on the PC. Yeah. It felt a little weird. I would have liked to have heard more about games like The Witcher or that are cross-platform, and talk about how that. And I know The Witcher. It does not appropriate that The Witcher be talked about there. I know No Man's Sky was there, which is going to be on 2 platforms, but they were kind of there because it was a big deal that they were coming to the PC. But I felt like I would have liked to have seen more representation from companies that are building games for the PC that aren't exclusively on the PC, as if being a PC gamer is only relevant if it's exclusive. If that makes sense. If
you're doing a PC gaming event, I don't know that I fully I fully get like how it would make sense for them to not focus on PC things. I think like isn't.
No, I think it's important, but it's not.
Is,
well, certainly,
but you get from our platform, you don't get anywhere else.
But Sony and Microsoft certainly don't only talk about exclusives in their press conferences, and so I think it would have been valuable to recognize, to say like, hey, this is just as there's a reason Black Ops wants to talk about gaming on our platform. There's a reason that The Witcher wants to talk about gaming on our platform, or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Okay,
like,
I get what you're saying now.
Certainly, these other, Assassin's Creed, wants to come and talk on our platform. So that's one thing. And
Ubisoft would have been laughed off stage.
Right, yes. Well, and part of it also is that I play a PC on PC frequently and sometimes exclusively for months and months and months on end. But I don't play StarCraft. I don't play World of Warcraft.
Right. And that's what I was saying.
I don't play Arma 3.
There were specific things I got into that I didn't care about, but there were plenty of things I talked about that I did care about.
The other piece of it that I thought was a little odd, Brent, and tell me if you think, I don't know if it's odd that I feel this was odd, but it felt odd to me that the PC Gaming Show was sponsored by weird to me was AMD, that AMD was sponsoring it, because you essentially excluded NVIDIA, and NVIDIA in doing that, and NVIDIA is a huge part of PC gaming. And it, what's that?
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah, it seems very weird to me, and also to be sponsored by, sponsored by games like gaming companies like Bohemia Interactive and Tripwire. It seems weird to have these companies sponsoring. It would be like saying Ubisoft sponsoring the Sony press conference, and so you hear more about Ubisoft.
Well, obviously, PC gaming is. I don't necessarily find it all that different in the sense that. Sony is a gaming hardware company. I mean, obviously they have developers and they do first party titles and so forth. But the difference between Sony making consoles and AMD making video cards, and both companies essentially having a press conference, I guess I don't find it that alarming. I mean, given everything that E3 is marketing, everything about E3 is trying to get people excited to spend money. And if AMD has suddenly had the great idea that, hey, even though PC gaming doesn't have, sort of like a central piece of hardware in the way the console does, we're as central a piece of hardware as PC gaming is likely to have, us and NVIDIA, why don't we do a fucking PC event at E3? I don't know. I did not think of it in those terms. It didn't bother me that was happening. It's conspicuous, certainly, but that's not to say that NVIDIA can't follow up next year and do their own fucking thing. Yeah,
but that's the thing. So it just seems it's written on their website. AMD presents PC Gaming Show powered by PC Gamer. So I understand that PC Gamer maybe doesn't want to take on the whole financial responsibility, but it makes sense to me that a PC Gaming Show. I mean, you're right. For Sony and Microsoft, this is marketing for them. This is meant to be their press conferences and their marketing. And so maybe it should just be the AMD show. But it seemed very weird to me that what we're calling a PC gaming show didn't include one of, if not the biggest PC gaming hardware manufacturer in the world.
Right. Well,
right. That's
we can start a Kickstarter and we can take care of that for next year. Let's get on it. We got to start now.
It felt like an ad for AMD and not a PC gaming show, if that makes sense, or like halfway in between a little bit, because AMD. It just seemed weird that and I don't like I said, I kind of, and you answered the question, but I'm not sure if it makes sense to feel weird about it, but something about it felt weird. Like,
I got you. A couple of the highlights of the show for me, like I said, I thought there were some good interviews. I thought asking Dean Hall about what he thinks about early access and that whole situation, given the fact that DayZ, which he has now famously walked away from, is one of the most high-profile early access games out there. His answer was pretty interesting. He talked a little bit about how Steam refunds might address some of the problems that people have with early access. I thought it was a really good interview with Cliff Blasinski. I thought hearing his thoughts about the industry, about leaving, coming back to the industry, what he's hoping to do now, and all that stuff, I thought it was very fascinating. So that's the one thing I will say that I really took away from it, is I thought that there was some really good information that came out of some of the interviews that were done there. And so for that, I did enjoy what ultimately I experienced from it. But I did not have the excitement level, certainly, that I did at some of the other events. As for the statement that many people called me out for last week when I said Bethesda won E3, you know what? I still think Bethesda won E3, at least for me. But the reason is because I knew what to expect from Sony and Microsoft. I got more or less what I anticipated I would get from them, whereas Bethesda's event was such a big surprise to me. I did not expect to be excited about the things that they showed to the degree that I was. And so for me, Bethesda was still probably my favorite press event of the show, just because it was such a pleasant surprise coming from a guy who traditionally has not been a huge fan of Bethesda stuff, but it's more something that's come to me recently in my gaming career. So for my money, I was still pretty happy with the Bethesda event. But I thought that, frankly, everybody I think everybody actually had a pretty strong showing. I think probably EA's was the one I was least interested in, just because they just had like the fewest games that I was really engaged by. But they did have Battlefront, so kind of made up for me a little bit. But overall, I thought everybody really brought their A game this year. That was my take, anyhow.
Yeah, I think it was a good E3. As I said, unfortunately for me, Brent, this year, I wasn't able to experience it the way I traditionally do just because of the whole moving thing and all that. But I definitely thought that there was some great stuff revealed. What I'm really looking forward to, honestly, and we will be talking about this stuff more in the coming couple of weeks, certainly on next week's show, which will come out next Tuesday as usual. We will talk about this a little more. I'm really looking forward to, I haven't had the opportunity to dive into some of the deeper content that has come out of E3. I mean, really what we talked about tonight was what we experienced via the press conferences, but a lot of the details come afterwards. Right. A lot of the hands-on comes afterwards.
There's still tons to dive into, and
there is, and I'm really excited to get deeper into it. I really want to look more deeply into Ghost Recon Wildlands. Yep. I definitely want to check out Unravel. I didn't get a chance to do that. I want to see everything I can see on Battlefront. Yes. Obviously, there's not going to be more information on South Park, but damn it, I wish there was. I want to hear if people are playing The Division or not. And so there's a lot of stuff that I want to know more about. I want to hear more about Oculus. If there's anything, people are getting their hands on the retail version, or what is very close to the retail version.
Are they letting people use the touch controllers? How does that feel?
They are, and reports have started to come out, and people have said they're pretty freaking incredible. And I really want to read more about that. So I'm really looking forward to. I think there was a lot of good stuff this year. I didn't, as I said at the top of the show, feel like there were a couple of moments. Final Fantasy Remake was a big moment. The announcement of backwards compatibility on the Xbox was a big moment. To me, South Park was a big moment. There were definitely moments throughout, but I didn't feel like, and I don't know how much you feel like Bethesda ran away with it, but I didn't feel like anybody like just completely knocked it out of the park and ran away with it the way there have been some in the past. There wasn't Horizon Zero Dawn, I think, was one of the most interesting, just out of left field properties that I didn't expect. But there wasn't, a Division or Last Guardian type of knock me down with a feather moment with a new IP. I was actually a little surprised that we saw almost nothing from Batman.
Just a little bit at the Sony press conference.
A little bit at the Sony press conference. And not that I think there needed to be. And honestly, when I saw it, I was
so soon now.
In a week, right? But typically, I still think because it's coming out next week, I was just surprised they didn't do more at the E3 because it is coming out next week. And so it's a great way to showcase their product before it releases. But I don't really give a shit because in 5 days or whatever it is, I'll be playing the shit out of it. And I cannot wait. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to seeing some more. We're going to talk more about it on Monday. And I'm sure over the coming weeks. So it's been a good E3. And certainly more to come. So as usual, we want to hear what you guys think about everything. And I'm certainly not going to run down the list of all the games we talked about, but please tell us what you thought of E3 as a whole. Let us know what you thought of the individual press conferences, if there were moments that stood out for you, games that stood out for you. Of course, let us know what idiotic things we've said in the last hour and a half that you want to challenge us on, because it's your voice that counts here. So once again, for Brent Adams, I am Lauren Baumgarten. And remember, you don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing.